All right, so Paul is sent to Felix. This is lesson 98. So you should be turned to Acts chapter 23. Okay, Acts chapter 23. Paul is sent to Felix. So we left off last time where that captain had captured Paul in Jerusalem. He gave him the opportunity on those steps of the castle to preach to the people. It only got the people into more of an uproar. So that leader, chief captain, and we'll learn later, Claudius Lysias is his name, he takes Paul and imprisons him or puts him away for the night. And we're going to see what happens here. Okay? Now, before chapter 23, we need to go back. The captain, verse 24, commanded him to be brought into the castle and bade that he should be examined by scourging, that he might know wherefore they cried so against him. So what does it mean to scourge someone? That's a Bible word. Means what? Kenton? To whip him. We're going to whip him until he tells us what's the real reason these people are upset. Well, then look at verse 25. Paul is going to reply. Before he gets scourged, Paul says this, and as they bound him with thongs, Paul said unto the centurion that stood by, is it lawful for you to scourge a man that is a Roman and uncondemned? Well, now that gets the chief captain's awareness up a little bit. Ooh, when the centurion heard that, he went and told the chief captain, saying, take heed what thou doest, for this man is a Roman. So there's a centurion who's supposed to do the work. Well, now he goes and reports back to the chief captain, going, by the way, chief captain, you told me to whip this guy, I'll do it. But he says he's a Roman. Do you want me still to do it? Okay. And the chief captain came and said unto him, tell me, art thou a Roman? And he said, yes. So now the chief captain gets out of his office or wherever he was. He makes his way back down to where Paul is. Are you really a Roman? Paul says, yes. And the chief captain answered, with a great sum obtained I this freedom. And Paul said, but I was freeborn. So the captain says, well, I'm a Roman because I paid a great sum of money. How is it that you are a Roman citizen? Paul says, I was born that way, right? Because he was born in a different land. Okay? And then straightway they departed from him, which should have examined him. So those who were supposed to whip left. And the chief captain also was afraid, for he knew that he was a Roman, and because he had bound him, because he had tied him up in chains. Ooh, I might be in trouble. On the morrow, because he would have known the certainty whereof, for he was accused of the Jews, he loosed him from his band, so he untied him, and commanded the chief priests and all their council to appear, and brought Paul down and set them before them. Okay? So, here we begin chapter 23. Okay? Paul is going to be sent to Felix. And Paul, earnestly beholding the council, so these men who are called together, said, men and brethren, I have lived in all good conscience before God until this day. And the high priest Ananias commanded them that stood by to smite him on the mouth. Smack his face. Then said Paul unto him, God shall smite thee, thou whited wall. Okay? He calls him a whited wall. What's a whited wall? Reading a little bit more helps us. For sittest thou to judge me after the law, and commandest me to be smitten contrary to the law? And they that stood by said, revilest thou God's high priest? What does it mean to be a whited wall? Or the Bible also speaks of a whited sepulcher. Anyone want to take a guess? It's maybe not something that you've come across. Garrett?
Is it like painting over the headstone?
Yes.
Covering it up?
Okay, a whited sepulcher or a whited wall. So, let's say we inherit a cave or this cave, a place where we're going to lay our loved ones, but it's hideous looking. So you take a thick white paint and paint it on that wall to make it nice and good looking. As Garrett says, you cover up the ugliness with the exterior, with a covering, a coating that makes you look good on the outside, but on the inside, underneath, is really sin and blemish and everything else. So Paul here accuses this man of being a whited wall. Okay, Ananias here. Who are you to judge me? You look good on the outside, but inside you're really a sinner. Okay? Verse 5, then said Paul, I wist not, brethren, that he was the high priest, for it is written, thou shalt not speak evil of the ruler of thy people. But when Paul perceived that the one part were Sadducees and the other Pharisees, so he realizes part of the council, Pharisees over here, and part of the council, Sadducees over here. So he's pretty adept at figuring things out. Paul is turning over his mind. He's making a plan here. What can I do to speak here? Okay? Whether he's trying to get himself out of it or save himself, or if he's thinking along the lines of Christ, I know I've got to go and do this. But anyways, he turns them against each other. Watch how he does this. But when Paul perceived that one part were Sadducees and the other part Pharisees, he cried out in the council, Men and brethren, I am a Pharisee, the son of a Pharisee, of the hope and resurrection of the dead. I am called in question. And when he had said so, there rose a dissension between the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and the multitude was divided. Maybe you had people over, maybe you had family members over for Easter the other day. Or maybe you think back to Thanksgiving or Christmas. And maybe, sadly, you can think of some members in your family who maybe don't get along on a certain topic or issue. Okay, you know that grandpa doesn't agree with dad on this, or mom always gets in an argument with her sister about this. Okay, so maybe they try to avoid those topics. But maybe on the flip side, you know that if you started talking about it, you could get them all worked up about it. One person in the family thinks this thing and another one thinks this thing. So you just kind of throw it out there. You say, well, what do you think about this, Aunt so-and-so? And you know that she's going to say something, and then another one, mom or aunt, is going to argue with her. No. Now you know that's not how it works. Okay? That's what Paul is doing here. He says, I am a Pharisee, a man of the resurrection. Well, who doesn't believe in the resurrection? Micah? The Sadducees. So now he's creating a division amongst them, and that's what happens. The multitude was divided. Verse 8. For the Sadducees say that there is no resurrection, nor angel, nor spirit, but the Pharisees confess both. And there arose a great cry, and the scribes that were of the Pharisees' part arose and strove, saying, We find no evil in this man, but if a spirit or an angel has spoken to him, let us not fight against God. So now they're self-righteous. They're saying, well, maybe God or an angel spoke to him. And they're saying, well, we're going to go with them because we know that Sadducees over there don't believe in angels and spirits. So we better go with this guy. Okay, and the Sadducees are going, no, there's no such thing as spirits and angels. There's no way they could have talked to him. Man's words are his own. He's using them against each other. They're arguing with each other. Okay? And they're... verse 10. And when there arose a great dissension, the chief captain, fearing lest Paul should have been pulled in pieces of them, commanded the soldiers to go down and to take him by force from among them and bring him into the castle. So again, go get Paul. He saves him. Again, pulls him out of this riotous mob who's now arguing. And Paul is hauled back into prison by the chief captain. Put, again, in a place that's safe. Okay? Meanwhile, you can imagine the Pharisees and Sadducees shouting at each other, maybe throwing things at each other. Who knows if it even got to blows, but they're arguing, and in the meanwhile, Paul is taken out. Okay, he gets taken out of there. But now this chief captain's got to figure out what to do with him yet. Okay? And that brings us to the nighttime, an important part in the lesson here. Follow along, verse 11. And the night following, the Lord stood by him and said, Be of good cheer, Paul, for as thou hast testified of me in Jerusalem, so must thou bear witness also at Rome. That's encouraging. Can you imagine God coming to you in a troubling time and actually speaking to you, be of good cheer? We can think of times, maybe not so many in your lives, but times in your life where family members, can you imagine that? To actually have God come speak to you. What great courage that must bring. Okay, what peace that must bring to know I am going through this difficulty. I am going through this struggle. God is with me. He actually talked to me. Okay, and that's what happens here. God comes to be of good cheer. And then he says, because you've also testified me greatly here in Jerusalem, but I also want you to go to Rome and there testify of me. So Paul knows what's coming. Okay? And when it was day, certain of the Jews banded them, so this is the next day, Jews banded together and bound themselves under a curse, so an oath, they take an oath, saying that they would neither eat nor drink till they had killed Paul. We're not going to eat, we're not going to drink until that man up in that prison is dead. We got to kill him. And there were more than 40 which had made this conspiracy. So 40 men, more than 40, agree that they are going to not eat or drink until they kill Paul. And they came to the chief priests and elders, so they don't go to the chief captain. Remember, they go to the leaders of the Jews, the chief priests and elders, and said, We have bound ourselves under a great curse that we will eat nothing until we have slain Paul. Now therefore, ye with the council signify to the chief captain that he bring him down unto you tomorrow, as though you would inquire something more perfectly concerning him. And we, or ever he come near, are ready to kill him. So do a trick. Go back to the chief captain. Tell him you've got another question to ask Paul. You want to bring him before you. And on the way, we will attack. And we'll make sure Paul is killed. Okay? We'll attack then and we'll kill him. Then the chief captain... I jumped ahead one there. Okay? So that's the plan in verse 15. Verse 16, and when Paul's sister's son, so Paul's nephew, heard of their lying in wait, so he must have overheard this plan, he went and entered into the castle, so he somehow got in and told Paul. So Paul must have been allowed to accept visitors. So this nephew of his goes and tells Paul, who's in prison. Then Paul called one of the centurions unto him and said, bring this young man unto the chief captain, for he have a certain thing to tell him. So he calls probably the guard there, that's a centurion. Take this young boy, he's my nephew, he has something to tell the chief captain. Bring him to the chief captain. Okay? So he took him and brought him to the chief captain and said, Paul, the prisoner, called me unto him and prayed me to bring this young man unto thee, who has something to say unto thee. Then the chief captain took him by the hand and went with him aside privately. So he took him aside privately so no one else could hear, and asked him, what is it that thou hast to tell me? And he said, the Jews have agreed to desire thee, that thou wouldest bring Paul tomorrow into the council, as though they would inquire somewhat of him more perfectly. So he tells them the plan. But do not yield unto them, for they lie in wait for him, of them more than 40 men, which have bound themselves with an oath, that they will neither eat nor drink until they have killed him. And now are they ready, looking for a promise from thee. So he warns them, this is what's going to happen. They're going to come and ask you for this. Don't do it. Verse 22, so the chief captain then let the young man depart, and charged him, see thou tell no man that thou hast showed me these things. In other words, don't spill the beans. Let the Jews keep thinking that their plan is going to work. Okay? Verse 23, and he called unto him 2 centurions, saying, make ready 200 soldiers. Remember, a centurion's over 100, so 2 centurions, 200 soldiers, to go to Caesarea, and horsemen 70, so 70 horsemen, and spearmen 200, at the 3rd hour of the night. What's the 3rd hour of the night? What time of day is that in our clock time? 3rd hour of the night. Remember when night starts? 3 hours after that. 3rd hour of the night. Jesse? No. Garrett? Midnight, generally. Yep, night is going to start around 9. So the 3rd hour of the night is going to be midnight. This happens at midnight. So you can imagine these soldiers probably laying in their beds, getting woken up, and they're being told, assemble yourselves, get ready, get your weapons, your gear. We're going to march to Caesarea through the night to guard one man, all those people. Okay? So we might think, well, the chief captain here is really, really, he's concerned about Paul. That's great. But remember, this is God working here. God is using the chief captain to have all these men to make sure Paul safely gets to Caesarea, and eventually we'll see how he gets to Rome. Okay? So anyways, those men are doing that. Okay? So the chief captain then let the young man depart. Oh, no, verse 23, at the 3rd hour of the night. Verse 24, and provide them beasts that they may set Paul on, so he gets to ride on an animal, and bring him safe unto Felix the governor, a Roman governor, Felix. And he wrote a letter after this manner. So here's the letter. Claudius Lysias, unto the most excellent governor Felix, sendeth greeting. This man was taken of the Jews, and should have been killed of them. Then came I with an army, and rescued him, having understood that he was a Roman. And when I would have known the cause wherefore they accused him, I brought him forth into their council, whom I perceived to be accused of questions of their law, but to have nothing laid to his charge worthy of death or of bonds. And when it was told me how that the Jews laid wait for the man, I sent straightway to thee, and gave commandment to his accusers also to say against him, say before thee what they had against him. Farewell. So kind of a sincerely. What are his lies in there? There are some lies in his letter. Claudius Lysias writes to Felix. What are some lies in there? Starting at verse 26 to verse 30. What are... We can come up with 2 lies in there that we could find. What did he change about the story to make himself look... Anybody ever done that? Change the story to make yourself look good? Oh, okay. We're all guilty, myself included. Anyways... Never, Logan? I don't believe that for a minute. No one can find a lie in here that he changed. What's not true about what happened? Garrett?
Did he not rescue Paul?
Yeah. You come in with the army there. What else? To me, this is the more obvious one there. Nothing, huh? Did he really? Why did he say he rescued him? Because he was, Megan? He didn't know he was a Roman. He was going to whip him. He was going to beat him. He had him all tied up. Kind of conveniently left out that part, right? Did you ever do that? Mom hauls you in. Dad hauls you in. Now what really happened? And you conveniently leave out the part where you did something bad. Oh, I see lots of smiles. So we've all done that, myself included, right? None of us are perfect, okay? But yeah, we see that there. He makes himself look real good about rescuing and understanding he's a Roman. All right, so then that's the end of the letter. So now let's see what happens. So after writing the letter, verse 31, then the soldiers, as it was commanded them, took Paul and brought him by night to Antipatris. On the morrow, they left the horsemen to go with him and returned to the castle. So some left and some keep going. And when they came to Caesarea and delivered the epistle, that means the letter, to the governor, Felix, presented Paul also before him. And when the governor had read the letter, he asked of what province he was. And when he understood that he was of Cilicia, I will hear thee, he said, when thine accusers are also come. And he commanded him to be kept in Herod's judgment hall. Okay? So, he continues on. Paul and the letter are now delivered to Governor Felix. Okay? And so we see some of those things now. He's going to hear him. We'll see how that goes tomorrow. But here is Felix. He wants to make sure, well, is this man someone I should... Oh, Cilicia? Okay, we'll go ahead and I can go ahead and make a decision on that. Okay? Herod's judgment hall used to be King Herod's palace. That awful, sinful, wicked man. Okay? And now he's being kept in there. He's probably chained to some type of soldier so that he couldn't run away but could sit in the judgment hall or move around somewhat freely, chained to this other man. But we'll see how that goes tomorrow, what things are. So they got to wait until the accusers from Jerusalem come. So you can imagine the next morning waking up and being those accusers or those men who had taken the oath. You think they kept that oath, Jen? Because if they kept the oath, what would happen to them? Megan? They die. There's no way they can go, because Paul is going to be here for a while, for years. He's going to be here a couple of years, and then he's going to go to Rome. He's going to be there for years. They never killed him. There's no way you can go years without eating and drinking. So either they forsook their oath, which they had made before the Lord, it gets them into a little bit more trouble. Okay? So they are unable to keep their oath. So if they did, obviously they have to die. But we can probably assume that most of them broke their oath. They're the type of person who makes an oath or a promise and doesn't keep it, which again teaches us that's a beautiful thing about God. God keeps his promises. He never, ever breaks his promises.